I was standing in a bar in Deauville, under warm yellow lights that hid every intention, when a powerful man looked at a woman 25 years younger and said, "I'm going to be the father of your children." Why did a line that sounded arrogant, almost offensive, not end in humiliation, but instead lead to one of Hollywood's most enduring marriages? Because the truth behind that moment was far from romantic, and far more unsettling than the version the headlines sold us. I had everything men dream of, yet the truth I never admitted was this: power does not protect you from loneliness, it sharpens it. Why did I still feel empty? I was already more than 4 decades into Hollywood by the time I met Catherine. Not surviving it. Conquering it. I had lived several careers inside one life. Actor. Producer. Decision maker. The man who didn't wait for doors to open because he owned the building. Awards followed. Respect followed. Fear followed too, though few ever spoke of that part. People saw the trophies. They saw the Oscar. They saw Wall Street and assumed I was Gordon Gekko in real life, cold, calculating, untouchable. What they didn't see was how deeply that image seeped into me. When you play power long enough, the line between performance and identity disappears. I stopped asking whether I understood women. I assumed I did. I stopped questioning life. I thought I had solved it. Producing changed me more than acting ever did. Acting lets you hide behind a script. Producing forces you to decide who matters and who doesn't. Every choice carries weight. Every mistake has a cost. Over time, I became comfortable with control. Too comfortable. Success rewarded certainty, not doubt. And doubt slowly felt like weakness. From the outside, my life looked full. From the inside, it was efficient. Structured. Quiet. I worked constantly because work never asked emotional questions. Films made sense. People didn't. Relationships required patience, humility, listening, skills that power slowly erodes. The higher I climbed, the fewer people spoke to me honestly. Admiration replaced intimacy. Agreement replaced connection. There is a specific kind of loneliness reserved for powerful men. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being surrounded. Meetings. Sets. Applause. Parties. Always noise. Yet Northwest one truly close enough to challenge you. No one willing to say you're wrong. Over time, you begin to mistake silence for peace. I told myself this was balance. That success demanded sacrifice. That emotional distance was the price of achievement. I believed it because it was convenient. And because no one around me had the courage to contradict it. When things go well for too long, you stop examining yourself. You stop noticing the cracks. By the time my name was spoken with automatic reverence, I had already built a version of myself that didn't know how to slow down. Or how to wait. Or how to ask. Desire became expectation. Interest became entitlement. Not in an obvious way. In a subtle one. The most dangerous kind. That mindset followed me everywhere. Into rooms. Into conversations. Into relationships. I didn't chase anymore. I selected. I didn't hope. I assumed. When I wanted something, I spoke as if the outcome were inevitable. It worked often enough to convince me it always would. What no headline ever captured was this: achievement did not calm me. It amplified everything I hadn't resolved. Power didn't answer my questions about connection. It postponed them. And the longer they were postponed, the more reckless my confidence became. Looking back, I can see it clearly. The man who walked into that bar in Deauville wasn't just confident. He was unchallenged. He believed the world had already proven him right too many times. And that belief shaped the sentence that would change everything. If you see parts of this mindset in yourself, I want to know whether you think success excuses emotional blindness or exposes it. And in the next part, I'll take you into the moment when this confidence collided with a woman who didn't bend to it at all. If these stories resonate with you and you want to support deeper, honest storytelling like this, subscribing helps keep this channel alive and independent. I survived cancer and still lost the battle that mattered most. Why did facing death not teach me how to save my own son? Illness strips away illusion fast. When the diagnosis came, it did not arrive with drama. It arrived quietly, clinically, without respect for reputation or legacy. Cancer does not care who you are. It does not negotiate. For the first time in my life, control vanished. Scripts meant nothing. Awards meant nothing. All that remained was time, fragile and uncertain. Recovery gave me energy, but it also gave me clarity. I saw how thin the line was between strength and collapse. I promised myself I would live more honestly, more present. But life does not test you once. It tests you repeatedly, until the lesson sinks in or breaks you. My son's addiction broke something deeper than illness ever could. Heroin is not a phase. It is not rebellion. It is a slow erasure. Watching your child disappear while standing right in front of you is a specific kind of helplessness. I had influence in boardrooms. I had authority on sets. I could move money, people, schedules. Yet none of that power mattered when it came to addiction. I learned how useless status becomes in a hospital hallway or a prison visiting room. I learned that love does not equal rescue. I supported him. I stood by him. And still, the system swallowed him. Years behind bars for nonviolent offenses. Years lost to punishment instead of healing. I could not protect him from the consequences, and I could not pretend the system was working. This was the moment when the image cracked. On screen, I played men who mastered chaos. Gordon Gekko bent markets with a sentence. He controlled outcomes. He won. Off screen, I was losing the one fight that mattered most. No monologue prepared you for that. No applause softened it. Fear crept in quietly. Not fear of death. Fear of impotence. Of realizing that power has limits, and those limits are brutal. I questioned everything I had believed about strength. About masculinity. About success. I had spent years convincing myself that certainty was virtue. That confidence solved problems. Addiction exposed that lie completely. The contrast was humiliating. The world assumed I had answers. I had none. I sat with silence. With guilt. With the knowledge that effort does not guarantee outcome. That realization humbles you in ways success never can. Something shifted inside me during that period. I did not want to dominate rooms anymore. I wanted honesty. I wanted connection without leverage. I wanted to feel chosen, not obeyed. Cancer reminded me life was short. My son's struggle reminded me love was fragile. Together, they stripped me of arrogance I did not know I still carried. By the time I walked into that bar in Deauville, I was not the same man audiences thought they knew. I was still confident, yes. But beneath that confidence was exhaustion. A desire to begin again. To be seen not as a force, but as a person capable of care, patience, and responsibility. That need for renewal shaped everything that followed. Including the words I chose. Including the risk I took. Including the woman who did not bend when others had. If you have ever faced a moment where success failed to protect you, I want to hear whether it changed the way you see power. And next, I'll take you into the night when that hunger for rebirth collided with someone who refused to be impressed at all. She was rising fast, wanted everywhere, and here is the truth that shocked me: why would a woman like that ever need a powerful man like me? I noticed Catherine at a moment when she no longer needed to be discovered. Zorro had already changed everything. Overnight, she became a face studios trusted, a presence audiences remembered, a name spoken with certainty rather than curiosity. She carried herself like someone who knew this moment was earned, not borrowed. Fame had arrived, but it had not rewritten her sense of self. When people talk about her youth back then, they miss the point. Youth did not make her vulnerable. It made her alert. She was young enough to be ambitious, but experienced enough to recognize patterns. She had seen how quickly attention can turn into possession, how admiration can disguise control. Hollywood rewards beauty loudly, then punishes it quietly. She understood that before many women ever do. She was in the middle of filming Entrapment, working long hours, moving between sets and expectations without losing focus. That matters. She was not waiting. She was building. Her days were full. Her future already moving. She was not searching for stability through someone else's power. She was creating her own. Powerful men notice women like Catherine for the wrong reasons first. Beauty. Visibility. Momentum. They assume admiration is enough. They assume experience grants authority. But Catherine had already learned the unspoken rules. Older men with influence often arrive offering protection, guidance, opportunity. What they really offer is proximity to control. She had no interest in being shaped by someone else's certainty. She did not fear powerful men. She simply did not mistake power for substance. She had grown up watching ambition closely. She knew confidence could be real or rehearsed. She knew charm could be generous or transactional. And she knew the cost of confusing the two. From the outside, it might have looked like the perfect imbalance. A legendary name. A rising star. A gap in age large enough for headlines to feast on. Inside her mind, the calculation was different. She measured people by how they listened, not how they spoke. By restraint, not insistence. By patience, not promises. What I did not understand at the time was that Catherine had already rehearsed refusal. Not dramatically. Quietly. She had learned how to step away without apologizing. How to leave before expectation hardened into pressure. How to protect her momentum without hostility. That skill alone separated her from many women Hollywood choose through. She had options. That changes everything. When someone has options, they do not rush toward certainty. They test it. They observe. They wait for inconsistency. And they leave when something feels wrong, even if the world tells them they should feel grateful instead. This was not arrogance. It was self-preservation. She knew fame magnifies mistakes. She knew attachment to the wrong person can stall a career faster than any bad role. And she knew that being impressed is not the same as being safe. I walked toward her assuming confidence would translate into attraction. She walked toward me already prepared to say no. That difference defined what came next. Her success had not made her softer. It had made her precise. Looking back, this was the moment where the story quietly tilted. Not because of what I said later, but because of what she was already capable of refusing. If you have ever recognized the strength it takes to walk away from power, you may see her decision differently. And next, I will take you inside the night where that refusal became inevitable. I watched Zorro and felt something rare stir in me. What happened that night in Deauville after only half an hour changed everything I thought I controlled. The festival air was restless, salt and perfume drifting through the streets, cameras flashing like distant lightning. Deauville always pretends to be calm, but nothing there is neutral. Films arrive with reputations. People arrive with intentions. I sat with the echo of Zorro still in my body, that mix of elegance and danger, and I knew I wanted to meet the woman behind it. Not eventually. That night. I asked my publicist to arrange a meeting. No drama. No pressure. Just a drink, if possible. The answer came back quickly. She would be there for one night only. In the middle of filming Entrapment. A narrow window. Those are the moments power teaches you to move fast. The bar was warm, low light catching glass and faces, conversations folding into each other. When she walked in, the room adjusted. Not because she demanded it, but because attention has a gravity of its own. The first look was brief. Measured. Curious without invitation. I stood. We exchanged greetings. Polite. Clean. Nothing cinematic yet. We talked the way professionals talk when both know the rules. Films. Work. Schedules. The rhythm was calm. Respectful. I made sure of that. I did not lean. I did not perform. I listened. She spoke with clarity, not eagerness. Every answer felt complete, as if she had already decided she owed nothing more. Time moved quietly. The festival buzz faded into background noise. I noticed the way she smiled without signaling. The way she laughed without encouraging. She was present but contained. That containment unsettled me more than flirtation ever could. I realized I was being assessed, not admired. After a while, her team needed her back on set. We stood. She was leaving. I asked, carefully, if she might return later for a nightcap. No expectation in the tone. Just the offer. She nodded. Neutral. Noncommittal. And left. I waited longer than I expected to. Long enough to question myself. Long enough to feel the old impatience surface and then recede. When she returned, it was quieter. Fewer people. The bar felt smaller. More honest. We sat again. The conversation resumed, but something had shifted. The space between us felt charged, not romantic, but precise. Like a line drawn. And then it happened. Not planned. Not rehearsed. A sentence rose out of me before judgment could stop it. I heard my own voice say it, calm and certain, as if stating a fact rather than a risk. I told her I was going to be the father of her children. The silence that followed was surgical. Not shock. Not anger. Clarity. She looked at me with a stillness that felt colder than rejection. She did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She did not laugh. She simply closed the space, stood, and ended the night. She told me she had heard enough about me. Seen enough. And that it was time to say goodnight. She left early the next morning. Gone before the city woke up. I stayed behind with the echo of my own arrogance. The sentence replayed itself, each word heavier than the last. For the first time in years, certainty felt reckless. I understood immediately what I had done. I had not impressed her. I had violated her boundaries. I had confused confidence with entitlement. I told myself the truth without comfort. I had destroyed the moment. There would be no second chance. No explanation. No clever recovery. Power had failed me in a space where restraint was the only currency that mattered. That night in Deauville taught me something I had forgotten. Desire does not grant permission. Intention does not excuse intrusion. And the right woman will walk away the moment you reveal who you really are. If you have ever said something you could not take back and felt the room change, you understand the silence she left behind. And next, I will tell you what happened after she disappeared, and why that ending was not the end at all. She vanished at dawn, and here is the shock I never expected. Why did losing her so fast teach me more about love than decades of winning ever did? By the time I woke up, she was already gone. No note. No message. No invitation to explain myself. The city felt emptied of its purpose. I replayed the night again and again, hoping to soften the sentence I had thrown so carelessly into the room. There was no version of it that sounded better in the morning light. For the first time in years, I did not feel confident. I felt exposed. The kind of exposure success does not prepare you for. I knew I had crossed a line, and worse, I knew she had recognized it instantly. There was no misunderstanding to correct. Only damage to acknowledge. I told myself to accept the loss. That this was the consequence of certainty without restraint. But something resisted inside me. Not entitlement. Not pride. Responsibility. If I was going to leave an impression, it could not be that one. I searched for flowers like a man unfamiliar with apology. Not grand. Not performative. Something simple. Something that said I understood what I had done without demanding forgiveness. Along with them, I sent words I rarely use. I said I was sorry. Not for the outcome, but for the intrusion. For assuming. For speaking as if her future were mine to claim. She had already traveled north, somewhere quiet, somewhere private. A place where the world does not intrude unless invited. I did not know if the flowers would reach her. I did not know if she would read the note. I knew only that this gesture was no longer about success. It was about respect. When the flowers arrived at her hotel, it surprised her. That much I later learned. Not because men do not apologize, but because powerful men rarely apologize without expectation. She did not respond immediately. She did not soften. She did not reward the effort. And that silence mattered. Waiting did something to me. It slowed me down. Forced me to sit without outcome. Without control. I realized how rarely I had done that in my life. I had chased results, not process. Solutions, not understanding. This was different. This required patience without promise. I did not send another message. I did not follow up. I did not explain myself further. I let the apology stand on its own, incomplete and unprotected. That restraint felt heavier than any pursuit I had ever made. What changed in that space was subtle but permanent. The impulse to conquer dissolved. In its place came a willingness to be chosen or dismissed without argument. I understood then that real interest does not insist. It waits. It accepts consequence. It respects timing that is not its own. The flowers were not a tactic. They were a line I drew for myself. If she never spoke to me again, I would at least know I had stepped back from the man I was becoming. That mattered more than the outcome. This was no longer a story about pursuit. It was a story about accountability. About learning that affection offered without humility is just pressure-wearing charm. If you have ever realized that wanting someone does not entitle you to them, you already understand the lesson this moment taught me. And next, I will show you how time, distance, and patience reshaped everything I thought I knew about connection. They laughed at the age gap and waited for collapse, but here is the shock: why did mockery strengthen us instead of pulling us apart? The difference in years became the headline before our names ever did. It was reduced to a number, repeated until it sounded like a verdict. Commentators framed it as imbalance. Friends whispered concern. Strangers assumed motive. The story wrote itself without our permission, and it was never generous. We did not correct anyone. We did not explain. There is a strange freedom in refusing to perform defense. Every denial feeds a narrative. Every clarification invites another accusation. So we chose something quieter. We let time do the talking, and time is patient when you stop rushing it. The jokes came first. Late-night laughter. Casual cruelty dressed as humor. I learned quickly that ridicule feels heavier when it pretends to be light. The implication was always the same. Power. Vanity. Control. The suggestion that affection was borrowed, not earned. That she would eventually wake up and regret it. That I would eventually slow down and lose relevance. We answered none of it directly. Humor became our shield, not as deflection but as refusal. We joked about wheelchairs and future arguments and who would forget what first. Not to minimize the gap, but to own it. Laughter took the sting out of assumptions and returned agency to us. What people never understood was that age did not decide the rhythm between us. Attention did. Curiosity did. The ability to sit together in silence without filling it with performance did. We were aligned in places that do not show up in photographs or headlines. Timing. Values. Boundaries. Respect for solitude. Critics expected fragility. They saw risk where we saw clarity. I had lived long enough to know that youth does not guarantee flexibility and age does not guarantee rigidity. I had also learned that chemistry fades fast when curiosity is absent, northwest matter how close in years two people appear on paper. We were measured constantly, but not by ourselves. Every public appearance became a test. Every private moment became evidence for someone else's theory. It would have been easy to resent that pressure. Instead, it simplified us. We learned to protect what mattered by not exposing it. Humor did more than soften attacks. It reminded us that seriousness can become its own trap. When people expect collapse, laughter disrupts prediction. When people expect defensiveness, calm confuses them. We did not owe anyone reassurance. Age is easy to count. Alignment is not. Alignment reveals itself slowly, in how two people disagree, how they recover, how they wait. It shows up in restraint more than passion. In listening more than speaking. In choosing presence over proof. The world kept watching for cracks. We kept living. Over time, the noise grew tired of itself. Mockery loses power when it fails to produce consequence. What remained was a relationship no longer defined by contrast, but by consistency. If you have ever watched assumptions fade simply because you refuse to feed them, you know the quiet strength that comes with it. And next, I will take you inside what happened when the joke stopped and real life finally began to test us. We built a life the cameras could not follow, and here is the shock: why did staying become harder, and more meaningful, than winning ever was? Marriage did not arrive like a victory lap. It arrived quietly, with routines and compromises that never make headlines. Children changed the tempo of everything. Days became structured around needs that were not negotiable. Nights shortened. Priorities shifted. The center moved away from applause and toward presence. That transition exposed truth fast. Life after the lights is where illusions collapse. There are no close-ups for patience. No soundtrack for endurance. There is only repetition. School mornings. Missed calls. Travel schedules that pull in opposite directions. We were not perfect. We argued. We withdrew. We recalibrated. The difference was not harmony. It was return. Hollywood loves the chase. It rewards intensity and novelty. It rarely celebrates maintenance. I watched relationships around us fracture under pressure that looked glamorous from the outside and corrosive within. People confuse chemistry with compatibility and passion with longevity. Those mistakes are loud at first and devastating later. Catherine was not someone to be wooed forever. She did not need reassurance wrapped in performance. What she required was consistency. Attention that did not fluctuate with success or stress. I learned that romance without reliability is just noise. Grand gestures fade quickly when daily respect is absent. For me, the change was uncomfortable and necessary. I stopped measuring myself by outcomes and started measuring by availability. Being there is not passive. It demands restraint. Listening when silence would be easier. Choosing home when distance offers escape. Staying when leaving would protect ego. We built a private language. Not secrets, but boundaries. Some things were not shared. Some moments were protected. That protection was not about hiding. It was about honoring what sustains a life rather than feeding an image. Over time, the outside pressure lost relevance because it no longer dictated our pace. The children anchored us in the present. They do not care about legacy. They care about who shows up. Parenthood is honest that way. It reveals patterns quickly and punishes inconsistency without apology. It also teaches humility. You learn fast that authority does not equal wisdom. Years passed without ceremony. Milestones arrived and left quietly. The relationship endured not because it avoided strain, but because it faced it without spectacle. Staying required more courage than leaving ever did. Staying demanded accountability when charm was insufficient. People often ask what the secret is. There is no secret. There is a choice, repeated daily, to remain when novelty expires. To replace pursuit with partnership. To trade certainty for curiosity. To accept that love matures when it stops needing proof. If you have ever realized that commitment begins after attraction fades, you understand the endurance this life required. And next, I will take you to the final truth behind that first sentence, and why it meant something entirely different than anyone expected. I once spoke a sentence that sounded like prophecy, but here is the truth: why did that reckless line only matter once I learned how to live with it? That night was never destiny announcing itself. It was impulse. Confidence without restraint. I'm unaccustomed to outcomes mistaking certainty for insight. The sentence did not predict the future. It exposed a flaw in the present. It showed how far I had drifted from listening, from humility, from asking instead of declaring. What followed was not romance by design. It was correction by consequence. She did not reward bravado. She tested character. She walked away when the line was crossed and returned only when respect replaced performance. That distinction changed everything. The moment did not bind us together. The response to it did. There was no tragedy to overcome. No grand sacrifice to mythologize. Just time, accountability, and choice repeated without ceremony. The story people wanted was transformation through love. The truth was transformation through responsibility. I did not become better because I was loved. I became worthy by learning to answer for what I said and how I acted afterward. Her role in this was never passive. She was not swept up. She was awake. The sentence challenged her boundaries, and she enforced them without cruelty. That enforcement was the test. It measured whether I could adapt or retreat. Whether I could replace entitlement with patience. Whether I could stay present when admiration no longer carried me. Looking back, the line only survives because it failed first. It failed to impress. Failed to seduce. Failed to secure anything at all. Its failure created space for something real to grow. Not inevitability, but intention. Not fantasy, but practice. Love does not begin with perfection. It begins with repair. With the courage to acknowledge harm without negotiation. With the willingness to wait without guarantee. With the discipline to remain when the thrill of pursuit evaporates and routine takes its place. I learned that confidence is loud, but commitment is quiet. That promises spoken too early mean less than actions repeated over time. That the bravest thing a powerful man can do is accept limits and let someone else choose freely. That sentence was never a prophecy. It was a mirror. It reflected who I was and who I needed to stop being. The truth arrived later, in mornings without applause and years without spectacle, where staying mattered more than winning. If this story reframed how you think about confidence and accountability, I am curious what part stayed with you the longest. And if you want to continue exploring the moments where power gives way to humility, there is another story waiting right after this one.